him shooting the parents. I can see him doing that. I can see it's not uncommon. But stabbing and strangling a 2-year-old that had nothing to do with anything is that whole other level of psychopathy. Who does that? You know, it's just unthinkable. And if he really, logically, what are we going to say? We're going to say logically, if he loved Carrie Ann, why would he do this to her family? And specifically, why would he do that to her youngest sister? I'm almost speechless when I see things like this. It's so disturbing to me. It's just something I can't wrap my head around, nor do I ever want to. I don't want to understand why he did it. I want to understand the development of the brain that has caused him to have these violent outbursts and turn that into, murder. But I don't want to understand it. I don't want to be complacent with that. To me, it's just unfathomable. I can't even say it. I can't believe I just can't wrap my head around anybody doing that to a young child. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Carol Ann Fugit came home soon after the murders were over, and she helped Charlie hide the bodies. The couple then hid out at the house for the next 6 days, refusing all visitors. When Fugit's grandmother grew suspicious and finally threatened to call police, the pair fled. Tells you something about Carol Ann, right? I mean, she's gonna bury or hide her parents' bodies and her younger sister's bodies and then still hang out with him. Now, she could have been scared of him. We don't know that. But I'm pretty sure she's probably just as messed up as he is. Together, Starkweather and Fugit hit the road. August Meyer was the next to go. Starkweather killed his dog, robbed his home, and stole his car. Needing a less conspicuous car, the couple hitched a ride with Robert Jensen and Carol King. Both were later found in an abandoned storm shelter, shot dead. Killing animals, we know, is one of the torturing animals. This is not the same thing. When we talk about the McDonald triad where they're torturing animals, we don't have any reports of him doing that when he was younger. Wouldn't surprise me if he did. But what this is talking about is the kind of control and power that you get from, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill your dog, and chances are he killed the dog before he killed them, because that's another power play. You're going to be devastated that someone shot your dog or your child, and then they kill you. They've just pushed it over the edge for you mentally, right? So that's another tactic that they use. That power, this kind of serial killing is that opportunist, He takes an opportunity to kill these people. He doesn't necessarily plan it out like BTK, but he certainly, if he saw that it was a good opportunity, he took it, right? Another home invasion followed. Local businessman C. Lauer Ward and his wife Clara and their maid Lillian Fincy all died when the young couple dropped by unexpectedly. Fincy was knifed repeatedly and the Wards were shot and stabbed. And again, Starkweather killed the family dog. I'm sure there's another reason he probably killed the dog. Maybe he never had pets. Maybe he hated. I don't know. But that's just like one more thing. Wait a minute, let me kill the dog. I just, what's going through his head? Starkweather's last victim was Merle Collison, shot when they found him sleeping in his car outside Douglas, Wyoming on January 29th of 1958. Now, by this time, there was a manhunt out for the couple, and they wrecked Ward's car, so they needed another. Collison probably never even knew what happened. A passing motorist did notice something wrong as did a passing sheriff's deputy, William Romer. The couple sped off in Collison's car, and Romer gave chase. One of Romer's bullets smashed Charlie's windshield, wounding him with flying glass splinters. Those were before the days that we had windshields, glasses, that if you hit it, it shatters, but it shatters in a pattern and it holds together typically, long before those days. But rather than go out in a bloody blaze of glory, the frightened Starkweather stood down and surrendered to the police. And that's also surprising to me, because you would think somebody with that kind of a violent tendency would want to shoot it out with the cops, or as this says, go out in a blaze of glory. Excuse me, I need to finish my coffee. But he didn't. He surrendered. So, of course, the spree was over, and he initially claimed full responsibility, stating, "Don't be rough on the girl. She didn't have a thing to do with it." Strange, right? Strange. Perhaps that was the only person he ever loved. Love can do that to you, right? You can be absolute monster to everyone else, but to that one person that you love, you're a completely different person. Perhaps that's the case here. I'm just making some educated guesses, right? And as stupid as this may sound, it makes me feel sorry for him. There was something that happened that caused all of this. And really, I think he was probably just seeking, a good life. And he thought he found that with Carol, but he didn't. So capital punishment was legal in Nebraska and Wyoming. And in Nebraska, it was the electric chair, and in Wyoming, it was the gas chamber. What Charlie didn't know was that Wyoming's then governor was an opponent of the death penalty who often commuted death sentences. Nebraska Governor Ralph Brooks was far less likely to commute. Not knowing this, Charlie chose extradition to Nebraska. To his shock, he and Carol Ann Fugit were tried as adults. Both faced certain conviction, the only question being whether one or both would get the death penalty, or the worst of it. Would they both get it, or would it just be him? Of course, the couple was separated and held in different prisons throughout the trial. When Starkweather learned that Fugit's lawyers were urging her to blame him entirely, mostly likely in an attempt at self-preservation, that's also very typical. His once chivalrous attitude changed. While he initially claimed Fugit was blameless, the man's bitterness now knew no bounds, and he began incriminating her in the rampage. Neither judge nor jury had any time to deal with Starkweather. I guess they figured he was, how serial killers typically will do, try to push the blame off onto other people. The jury of 8 women and 4 men found him guilty. Nebraska juries could also set their preferred punishment, and their choice was to be expected, of course. He was to die by electrocution. Starkweather was shipped under heavy guard to Nebraska State Penitentiary's death row just outside Lincoln, where he awaited an almost certain date. They call it Old Sparky. That's not funny, really. That's not funny. If he'd been vengeful before, his worldview wasn't improved by impending electrocution. Well, of course it wasn't. Horrible attitude. I mean, you've been busted, separated from the person that you love, went to trial, found guilty, now you're going to be on death row. Not a good life. When he testified at Fugit's trial, he claimed that she'd not only shot Carol King, but given a be sure shot to Merle Collison. So she shot Merle again, according to Fugit. According to oh my gosh. Starkweather. According to Starkweather. Got all these names and it's mixing me up. The prosecutors portrayed Fugit as a gangster's maul, not a hostage. chipping away at her claim that she'd only stayed with Starkweather out of terror. Few believed the young woman's story, especially when Charlie said she could have escaped any time she wanted. He further incriminated her by saying, "If I find the electric chair, she should be sitting in my lap." Ooh, that's brutal. So Carol Ann Fugit received a life sentence, but kept a spotless prison record and gained parole in 1976. And to this day, she refuses to discuss Charlie, though she still maintains her innocence. As expected, Governor Brooks did not intervene in Starkweather's execution. When the time came, just after midnight on January 25th of 1959, the killer was unrepentant. Most of them are unrepentant. He gave no final statement as guards strapped him into the electric chair, and he walked in at midnight, was wheeled out less than 10 minutes later. For the Starkweathers, the Fugits, and the families of his many victims, Charlie's legacy does persist, and of course, we know that now because of the movies that have been written about him or he's influenced, the songs, his influence on all these stories. And ironically, he was buried in Wicca Cemetery in Lincoln, sharing it with 5 of his victims. Oh, I don't like that. I don't know. I think if I were a family member, I would be very offended by that. I wouldn't want him in the same cemetery as my family, especially if he's the one who killed him. Crazy. So he is definitely one of the worst that I've seen as well. I mean, just killing for no apparent reason. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. All right, so we probably have time to do one more. Jordan Brown. I remember this case, and I wasn't, I don't think I was, certainly we didn't have this kind of, we didn't have these shows that talk about serial killers. We didn't have this fascination with serial killers. So this was just a news story. And I think since then there's been like a 2020 show, and you can watch some biographies of him. But Jordan Brown was 11 years old on February 20th of 2009 when he murdered his father's 26-year-old fiancée, Kenzie Houck, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, and her unborn son was also killed. While the soon-to-be mother was sleeping in her bed in their New Beaver, Pennsylvania farmhouse, Brown shot her in the back of the head using a gun given to him by his father. Houck's youngest daughter alerted nearby adults to the situation after Brown had gotten on the school bus. Police arrived later that day to find a shotgun in the house and the smell of burnt gunpowder. Jordan was interviewed by Pennsylvania State Police twice the day of the incident before he was arrested the following morning. It was confirmed that Houck was killed by a youth model Harrington and Richardson 20-gauge shotgun. Prosecutors speculated that Brown killed his stepmother because she was angered by the pending birth of a new sibling and was jealous about the attention his stepsisters received. Initially, Brown was to be tried as an adult, but was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder as a juvenile. Initially, he was, in 2018, he was exonerated as the court determined that the evidence could have been planted by an unknown assailant and thus was insufficient to find him culpable beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what you'll get sometimes in these appeals. You know, they'll be overturned, and then that'll be appealed, and that gets overturned. I mean, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So I don't know if you've ever seen his picture, but the picture they have of him, he just looks like this little tiny boy. He looks in the picture, his mugshot, like he's been crying, which wouldn't surprise me. And he is he doesn't really have any expression at all on his face. Now he